Hello, I hope all is well. So, Oldschool Runescape has now been out over 10 years, with Runescape in general being over 22 years old. Many of us have played for the majority of RuneScape's existence, starting in our early teens and continuing into adulthood. One question that has inevitably crossed many of our minds is, will RuneScape eventually die out? In this video, I'll be talking specifically about Oldschool. Now, because I don't want to drag this video out for 10 minutes before giving any sort of answer, obviously, it will not live forever. It's unlikely that RuneScape will still exist in the year 3000, but I do not believe it is anywhere near its end. Let me explain my thought process. So MMOs in general have seen better days, and while I won't pretend to be an expert on gaming, from the research I did for this video, it seems like many games have faced declining player bases, with some ceasing to exist altogether. Contrary to that, Oldschool RuneScape has a steady, healthy player base, and has even seen some growth in recent times. Let's look at why that might be. While I don't have a specific empirical data on the subject, it seems from the discussion I have in-game that the majority of RuneScape players have many years of experience. New games come out, sometimes with a lot of hype, and often see sharp declines not too long after release. Now compare that to RuneScape's steady, consistent player base, many of who have played on and off for 15 to 20 years. Now, I'll use a restaurant metaphor to kind of illustrate my point here. So consider a new MMO at release to be like a brand new restaurant opening near your house. Now in this scenario, RuneScape is your favorite existing restaurant, one you've frequented for years, even perhaps decades. Now for me, that's Taco Bell in the fast food category and Texas Roadhouse in the sit-down category. No, neither of these sponsored this video, though. That would be pretty cool. I would love a Taco Bell sponsor. So Taco Bell, if you're listening, here I am. So anyway, one may try out the new restaurant, and maybe due to the hype, maybe due to a promotion they run and attempt to draw new customers, but ultimately they are more likely to return to their favorite restaurant. This is because just like customers have a limited demand and money to spend on restaurant food, available gamer hours are finite, and the loyalty enjoyed by RuneScape, I believe, will continue to cause players to return. Just like I often return to Taco Bell for second lunch after eating my first lunch, but we don't have to talk about that. Like any product, MMOs have varying strengths and weaknesses. For some, that may be realistic graphics. This isn't likely a category that OSRS will win many awards, but many players, myself included, appreciate the old school graphics and the fact that the game can pretty much run on a toaster. In fact, one of my earliest memories of playing RuneScape back in 2005 was on an ancient mid-90s desktop computer at my grandparents' house. In my opinion, one of old school RuneScape's greatest assets is the lack of microtransactions, and I find it hard to believe there'd be many players who would disagree with me on that one. It's no secret that gamers hate microtransactions, and for good reason. Imagine if you could simply buy your way through the unpleasant parts of the game. Want 99 agility? That'll cost you $200. Or you can grind rooftops for 150 hours. Your choice. This would undoubtedly erode player morale and create a rift between big spenders and those who just play the game. So I experienced this firsthand in a game I played for a little over a year, a few years back. I won't mention the name of the game, but let's just say it's from the same developer that makes a frequent sponsor of many RuneScape YouTube videos. You know the one. So I somewhat fell prey to the spending cycle and was typically burning through maybe $30 or $40 a month, so not too much more than RuneScape membership costs, yet the power-ups and boosts received seemed pretty lackluster for the amount of money I was spending. There were some players who spent absolutely nothing, and they did take advantage of the totally free to play, but I could easily take them out with not much effort. Meanwhile, there were some people who spent hundreds of dollars per month and thousands of dollars per year on this game, and were years ahead of where I could hope to be at the rate I was spending. So I would say the RuneScape equivalent to my situation in this game would be getting stuck in the mid-game and having any late-game content you want to participate in locked behind a $1,000 paywall. Definitely not worth it for me, at least. I remember reading that developers like this rely on deriving the overwhelming percentage of their revenue from just 1 or 2% of their player base, and I don't see this as a sustainable business model in the long term. This seems like the type of game that will come out, see 90% of players quit once they hit the paywall, and a few years down the road be left with exclusively late game players and a huge barrier to entry for new players. So Old School RuneScape's ability to avoid this bodes well for its long-term viability, I believe. So, a YouTuber named The Lazy Peon, who I'd never watched before researching for this video, made two general MMO tier lists. One where he ranked the games based on his opinion, and another where he allowed the community to vote. So in both lists, Oldschool Runescape came in A tier, and it was just one of 5 or 6 games out of several dozen to do so. Now, of course, this doesn't by any means prove Oldschool Runescape is a great game destined to succeed long term, but I do think it speaks wonders of the game's positive impact to be ranked A tier by both methods. This creator seems overall quite knowledgeable, and at the time of recording, he has over 700,000 subscribers, which I believe is more than any current RuneScape exclusive channels, and I think that speaks wonders for the game that a channel of this magnitude is recognizing what a great game Oldschool Runescape is. Another characteristic that I believe protects Oldschool Runescape's long-term viability is the fact that it's already proven to be able to run on a small budget. So at launch, many at Jagex did not expect Oldschool Runescape to survive more than 6 months or so. I think that's pretty common knowledge at this point. Therefore, it was given an initial development team of 4 staff. So though returning to a bare bones operation out of necessity would be pretty bad sign, it can be done. I don't foresee this happening anytime soon, but perhaps after years or even decades of steady player decline, this strategy could be re-implemented. I believe even with a serious reduction of player count, we're talking 90% or more, Oldschool could still be profitable, though some of the necessary expenditure cuts could greatly deteriorate overall gamer experience. Membership prices could be increased, servers could be shut down, the number of servers reduced, and developers could be let go or reassigned to other projects, but a bare bones operation would not be all that expensive. Future updates would likely be greatly scaled back, but diehard players would still have the game that they've come to love, and the existing content is still quite vast. So additionally, content creators like Settled, Soup, and many others finding new ways to play the game or challenges to tackle, I think could be the catalyst that continues to provide a sense of freshness even in a stagnating game. So though this is not the ideal scenario, I'm simply attempting to explain how I believe Oldschool could and likely would survive even with a significantly reduced player base. According to my YouTube analytics, nearly all of us playing this game are 24 to 34 years old. We were 8 to 18 during the golden age of RuneScape back in 2007 or so. So many of us are still playing the game in our 20s and 30s. I know personally there were several major life events where I predicted the end of my RuneScape career was near. Going off to college, marriage, kids, sure, each step there was less time to play, but I always came back, sometimes after breaks of months or a year or more. I don't think my experience is that unique for this community. My point is that many of us at age 30 are still playing a game we discovered at age 12 and either continue to do so throughout major life events or came back after those life events, meaning that I think even as we have more major life events going forward, we could very easily and realistically continue playing. With this being the case, I don't think it's a huge stretch to imagine many of us continue to play into our 40s, 50s, and possibly even into retirement. RuneScape has been around for 21 years, and most of us playing today have been here for more than half of its existence. We are adults with careers and families, yet we still have this hobby despite being much busier in our personal lives than we were when we were kids. There is no exact parallel to previous generations since, for the most part, we are the first generation to have home internet from a relatively young age. Most of our parents who had video games like Pong and Pac-Man may view them with a level of nostalgia, but they likely don't play them regularly today. However, it is common for people to maintain childhood hobbies lifelong. Consider baseball cards, coin collecting, chess, specific genres of music or movies. I don't think it's a huge stretch to consider that just maybe RuneScape will be that lifelong hobby for some of us. As long as enough paying members remain to cover operating costs and generate a modest profit, I don't see a reason for Jagex to turn off the lights. One last point I would like to make, because this video is already getting a lot longer than I intended it to, is that yes, it is likely that in the long run, player base will gradually trend downwards. The potential for future new players likely consists mostly of people who had played RuneScape at some point in their youth deciding to give Oldschool a shot, perhaps a decade or two since they had last played. I don't anticipate a bunch of today's 12-year-olds to seek out a 2-decade-old medieval point-and-click simulator, given what they tend to be drawn to now. There is, however, one potential source of new players that may be overlooked. Many of us have or will have children one day, and before anyone starts thinking it, no, I'm not considering making my son into an agility slave. What I am suggesting, however, is that it's normal for parents to kind of steer and direct their children towards things that we enjoy in the hopes of fostering that same interest and that same enjoyment we have. So this is commonly seen with parents thinking their kid has a shot at the NFL or the NBA, but could easily be done with RuneScape as well. For the record, I would never suggest, nor will I push my kid to play RuneScape, of course not. But I do think it's reasonable to introduce them to it once they reach an age where they gain an interest in video games. RuneScape could be one thing we do with our kids for, an hour before bed and sparingly on the weekends to spend some extra time together. It may seem strange, but I'm willing to bet that in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see some young players who are the children of longtime RuneScape veterans. Perhaps there will be a series of a longtime RuneScape veteran doing a group Ironman with his 8-year-old son. That might be really cool to watch. If you've made it this far, thanks so much for watching. I do hope you found this video somewhat interesting or at least entertaining. Let me know what you think in the comments section. And I also just wanted to say that in the 6 years I've had my channel, this is the first time I have ever actually written a script for a video. So I'm curious what you think of this style. Typically I just kind of ad-lib during the voiceover, but with this type of video I felt I needed to write everything down. Otherwise I was certainly going to miss a bunch of points, and heck, I probably still did. Okay, that's going to be all for this. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.